Okay, Diwakar, I think we can start.
Sure.
Just in interest of time.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, friends. Welcome to the Q2 FY22 earnings call of Neogen Fintech Limited. Today we have the top management of Neogen, represented by Tashwinder Singh, the Chief Executive Officer, and the CFO Rumit Dugar. And we also have a special invitee in Amit Rajpal, who's the non-executive chairman and co-founder. The agenda for the day is as follows. We're just going to play a short video of about 2.5 minutes, which will talk about one of our product platforms. Then Amit will give his opening remarks, which will be followed by Tashwinder with his views on the quarter gone past and the outlook for the future. And then we'll have Tash and Rumit take on the Q&A session from your participants. Without much ado, may I now request Ravi to kind of play the video, please. Ravi?
Yeah.
Finance eats the world. Every business starting from retail, food delivery, taxi services and citizen services wants to provide financial services to their customers.
It's not visible. Are you able to see?
Finance is complicated. You have to be a...
Ravi is not showing up.
Yeah, 1 second.
Finance eats the world. Every business starting from retail, food delivery, taxi services and citizen services wants to provide financial services to their customers. Finance is complicated. You either have to be a bank or be sponsored by one, or have to figure out stringent regulations both in technology and compliance, of which there are hundreds like PCI DSS, AML laws, KYC laws, ISO 8583, networking, switch, and of course, need to have access to capital as well. This takes a lot of time and effort. Doesn't have to be. The time which you can invest on figuring out all this, spend it on acquiring and serving the customer, while iServeYou does the heavy lifting for you. But iServeYou makes it simple and quick. Your customer interacts with your brand in form factor of your choice, be it physical or digital. You could be a B2B business or a B2C business. You could have a desktop app or a mobile app, or for that matter, may not have an app at all. iServeYou's composable, configurable, customizable banking layer has a solution for you. You could use the drag and drop no-code builder to get a customized experience for your users. Or you could build your own user experience using our well-documented API SDK. iServeYou's platform provides you transaction guarantee with its full-stack fintech platform, which comprises of core banking solutions, switching capabilities, notification engine, lending, and business analytics. Whatever is your platform, iServeYou has an easy API or SDK to connect with. If you want to provide embedded contextual financial services to your customer as part of your physical or digital strategy, we would like to know more. Monetize your customer network by providing financial services through iServeYou today. Connect with us now.
Thank you so much, Ravi. That was a short glimpse of iServeYou. May I now request Amit to take over?
Yes, thank you, Diwakar. And my name is Amit Rajpal, and I'm the chairman and co-founder of Neogen Fintech Limited. I think I wanted to take maybe 5 minutes of your time to go through Neogen from a strategic standpoint. But preceding that, I'm usually on your side of the table. My normal job is to be an investor and an analyst previously in financial services stocks and fintech stocks globally. And I think in the realm of fintech, I have been active both in India but also globally in the enablement of blockchain and financial services as well. I guess the first question I want to address is why should someone look at fintech in India? Why now? What's the opportunity? Then I want to get to why Neogen, and then finally I just want to talk a little bit about our strategy as well. So I think why now? I think generally in India, my view is that conventional delivery models in financial services don't work well where granularity is required, especially where ticket sizes are small, like with financial inclusion or with micro and small businesses, where then the cost of any manual intervention makes the business sub-economic commercially. And therefore, leveraging technology becomes important. At the same time, India has made remarkable progress with regards to simply the ubiquity of the mobile phone, the cost effectiveness of the data that's available, but most importantly, the public rails which have been put in place, both with Aadhaar and UPI. And creating platforms on top of these rails is where the opportunity is to digitize manual processes to leverage existing distribution. So Neogen has been designed to create platforms which build off the inherent infrastructure that's in place in an environment where data is easily accessible and phone usage is becoming broader and broader. And I think the focus at Neogen on building platforms also is defined, I would say, in areas where we want an open architecture, where we want modularity, where we want a full stack. These are the basic prerequisites of a platform. And these business models do exist, the financial infrastructure business models globally. We can't say we're aligning to any specific business model, but there are companies like Solaris in Germany, there's companies like Stripe, there's companies like Adyen, who's made a business of dealing with partners and enabling them for success. And they're the ones who manage and run the platform that they built, which has these three characteristics: the open architecture, the modularity, and the full stack. In our case, with our partners, we're looking to enhance both their income, but also improve their efficiency. We're not only an efficiency enhancer, we're also an income enhancer. And I think that's important to build alignment. We have generated proof of concept with our financial inclusion platform via iServeU, and established multiple partnerships now with very serious entities which are in varying stages of execution. And the endeavor from here is to build a full stack product. So what started with payments and financial inclusion can move to point of sale, can move to financial services, can ultimately move to commerce. And that orientation is something that I think we're particularly excited with what the management team has presented in its hypergrowth plan, which the board has approved in its meeting yesterday, where we come in with the 100 crores of investment in order to fast track the build out of the financial inclusion platform, which has already gained proof of concept, where we're feeling increasingly confident in terms of driving our potential and ultimately our revenues. I also want to say a final little bit on our listing. We've been a listed company right effectively from the start since we put Neogen together. And I think we see our listing as a strength. And it's very rare for such startup companies to be listed straight away. But the listing has enabled us make the acquisitions of iServeU and Moneyfront, which have transformed Neogen. I would say the startup ecosystem in India is thriving, has lots of young companies, which may not all achieve scalability themselves, and therefore making infill acquisitions at Neogen to help our product and tech stack to broaden us out is something we view as complementarity something frankly we view as a strength of Neogen being a listed company. So from my perspective as founder and as the non-executive chairman, I want to highlight that we're at a moment in time in India where the ability to drive platforms and platform adoption is significant. In Neogen, we're prioritizing the build of our platforms, and today we're here to discuss a financial inclusions platform where we think we've achieved a proof of concept to drive scale now. And we view our listing as a source of competitive advantage, especially as the startup ecosystem in India for smaller businesses is very, very vibrant and thriving. So I really kind of, from my standpoint, want to leave it there, but most of the heavy lifting and the details and the execution discussion will come through our management team. So I want to hand off to Dash to take it forward from here.
Thanks, Amit. If I may just start. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining in today, and wish you a very happy Diwali. We are very close to the holiday season coming in, so wish you a very happy Diwali, and thank you for taking time to listen to our story. What I will do is I will give you a brief perspective on the quarter that's gone by, and then maybe we can dive in a little into the hypergrowth plan that Amit alluded to, and just tell you what is it that we are really trying to do and what we are trying to achieve. Really, on the quarter gone by, all of you know the lockdown restrictions were gradually lifted during the quarter. Economies began to take its path back to regain its former momentum. We continue to reap the benefits of this sustained execution as our revenues again recorded a 18% sequential growth. We have continued to pivot our business to a platform-centric model, and now 78% of our revenues come from non-balance sheet business. As we add new products, we will continue to see this unfold over the long term. In terms of our reach, our rural tech business now has close to 200,000 retailers and clocked a GTV of more than 20 billion rupees during the quarter, a growth of 25% quarter on quarter on a like-to-like basis. Our GTVs now include retailer wallet to bank payouts, bringing our GTV reporting in line with industry norms. Our urban tech partner base also grew at 43% YOY and stands at 4,636 partners. Our wealth AUM also showed some decent growth, rising more than 120% to about 1,800 crores of AUM. Our credit loan book is down 71% YOY and now stands close to 28 crores against 96 crores at peak in September 30th, 2020. This is, as mentioned earlier, aligned with our articulated strategy of exiting generalized credit to de-risk our balance sheet and focus on transaction-led credit. Q2 saw us reach a few milestones as well for our business. Apart from expanding our business with partners like CSC Common Service Centers, Bharat Financials, among others, we also added a significant number of marquee partners such as Sahaj, Bajaj Finance, and Hermes IT. We also added Airtel Payments Bank to augment our bank partnerships. The other significant change we have made to our platform is that we have now become device agnostic, and we offer micro ATM services in the bring your own device model to enable an open architecture which widens our platform TAM significantly, as we can now target a wide range of devices which are already installed. I think this is a significant change to the way we have approached this market. As a result, the embedded micro ATM solution for POS players has also been launched this quarter, a solution that will basically help micro ATM transactions through existing POS devices. This model is being rolled out in strategic partnership with Atos Worldline as our partner, and this should increase our TAM pretty significantly, that every POS device can potentially also become a micro ATM device today. Our consolidated revenue for the current quarter stands at 259.9 million rupees, up 18% quarter on quarter and about 230% year on year. Our adjusted EBITDA was INR 8.4 million compared to INR 13 million in the corresponding quarter last year, as we continue to make investments in building platform capabilities. Our balance sheet continues to remain strong, and we are debt-free as of date, with cash and equivalents of over 1.7 billion rupees. So that's a little bit about the quarter. We can certainly take questions on that once I'm through with the second part of my discussion, where we are really going to talk about detailing the plan for investment as approved by the board. I think the significant market opportunity coupled with the market acceptability of our platforms has given us the confidence now to invest in building this business further. I think we spent 2 quarters, last 2 quarters, where we did the proof of concept, as Amit mentioned. both the quarters we've seen significant sequential growth in the 18 to 20%. We believe this business now has significant operating leverage, and acquiring scale both in terms of distribution footprint and product breadth is critical for us. We are therefore happy to tell you that the board has approved an investment plan to further our business build. The plan is to invest up to 100 crores to hyperscale the business in the next 2 years. The money will largely be utilized in building our talent and technology to help bring in incremental products and service capabilities on our platform. Our business design, as you all know, is to provide modular platform infrastructure to power any business that wants to provide financial services and products to its customers. We are a B2B player. I think it's important to mention that. This distinction is important as this separates us from product-centric players with a direct end customer go-to-market strategy. This investment will help expand the service infrastructure and the product stack on our platform. Given the product breadth and the modular nature, our partners can pick and choose the product stack to help monetize their networks. The plan is therefore to be the platform to deliver full neo-banking services and products to the customers that work with us. Now, we had mentioned earlier that our GTV currently is about 2,100 crores per quarter, and the number of transactions we process is in the ballpark of 6.9 million per quarter. We believe we can increase these numbers by 8 to 10x over the next 3 years. We started this transformation in FY21, and with the proposed investment, we believe we can scale the revenues also 8 to 10x over the FY21 numbers over the next 3 years. So that's really the aim on what we want to achieve with this company and drive growth and relevance in the market. I'll pause here. I think we can open it up for some questions, and then we can get into more details depending on what details you guys want us to get into.
Thank you so much, Tash, and thank you, Amit. Now we'll start the Q&A session. If you have a question, please put up the raise hand, and then I'll open up your line and you can ask questions. Questions will be taken only by Tash and Rumit. Just a kind request, when you ask the question, in case you represent an organization, please mention the name of the organization. It helps us while we're transcribing the questions and answers. So would much appreciate it if you just name organizations. So the first question comes from the line of Shanay Kothari. Shanay, I've unmuted you. Please go ahead.
Hi, I'm an individual investor.
Sure.
I just wanted to know about the micro ATM part that you spoke about in the presentation. So what exactly is that business? And second part is, what exactly is the tie-up with Bajaj Finance and the Bharat Financials you are talking about? So what service do we do for them basically?
Sure. Thanks, Shanay. Thank you for joining in. So micro ATM solutions are basically trying to convert or provide a digital to cash solution to consumers who are based in rural India. What we are doing effectively is all the Kirana stores and the retail outlets that you see in rural India, we provide them with a device which allows them to access their bank through that device. So the device is used as an authentication device. You can walk in with your debit card, get authenticated, and the Kirana store will then give you the cash. So you're effectively taking money out of your cash account. Effectively, you are converting a Kirana store into a ATM. Now, these are small micro ATM devices in the sense that unlike the big ATM devices you see in the big cities where cash is dispensed by the machine, here what happens is that the Kirana store owner is dispensing the cash and the device is being used for the authentication and for the transaction to be validated. Now, the authentication, validation, all of that happens on our network. So we connect with the Kirana store, we provide the device to the Kirana store at one end, and at the back end, we connect with the banks, right, who are able to then authenticate that the money is there in the account, and all the to and fro transactions happen through our network, and the Kirana store guy then uses his own cash to dispense the cash out. Effectively, what you've done is you have expanded the number of ATM points in the country quite significantly. So that's on how the micro ATM proposition works. I think it's a material change. Effectively, just to give you an idea, there are about 400,000 old school ATMs in the country. When you talk to 1.3 billion people, it's difficult to sort of think through the old school ATMs, which need to be funded by, someone has to come in, put in cash, manage those ATMs. It becomes difficult to manage them as you get into the deeper heartland of India. So this solution provides customers access to their bank accounts, as I mentioned, and allows them to get cash right there, literally at the doorstep, because you're going to your Kirana store, who could be a couple of meters away from your place of stay. So that solves the big problem for them. That's on the micro ATM part. For the other partners that we are doing, there are different solutions we are providing to different people. I had alluded to what we were doing for Bajaj Finance in my previous call. We have a solution called Aadhaar Pay, which allows a customer to use his fingerprint, again relying on the rails that the government of India has set in place, right, where he can again transfer money by using his thumbprint. So for Bajaj Finance, they do a lot of rural lending. They have about 72,000 at last count of agents that are walking around with a handheld device, recovering money or collecting EMI points from the customers. What we've done is we've given them a solution, which is a small SDK solution, that we've uploaded our Aadhaar Pay solution on those devices. So when they go to a customer can just put his fingerprint and make a payment where he transfers money from his bank account into the Bajaj Finance account. Now, you need to take into account the fact that all this is happening in rural India. This is the whole rural financial inclusion platform that we're talking about, right? When you think of urban India, one starts asking questions, why can't the customer just transfer money through UPI? Why do we even need the solution? But rural India presents a very different challenge where customers are taking loans, right, in the case of Bajaj Finance, and need to have a mechanism whereby they may or may not be comfortable using smartphones or may not be able to do transactions directly. Whereas this proposition then helps Bajaj on recovering cash as they go meet these customers. So that's the solution we are giving to them. The other people, again, it's a variety of solutions. BaFin, we are doing micro ATMs. CSC, we are doing micro ATMs. Of course, life starts with one product, and with all our partners, our aim is to try and cross-sell incremental, ideas, thoughts, or provide bespoke solutions if that's what they need, to make sure that we are relevant for them. And we are able to then, get transactions done through our network. Does that answer your question, Shanay?
Yes. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Do you have a follow-on, Shanay? Or?
No, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Shanay. Participants, if you have a question, please press the raise hand button. We have the next question from the line of Neerav Dalal. Neerav, I've unmuted your line. You need to unmute yourself before you go. Yeah. Thanks.
Hi. Thank you. This is Neerav Dalal from Maybank Community Securities. I have a question in terms of competition in this line of business, in the rural tech business, because we see a number of companies who are trying to use this model. So what is our differentiation here, and is it, and then what would be our unit economics in this? And thirdly, is there exclusivity with the partners, like you talked about Bajaj Finance? So how does this work?
Yeah, I think let me take the first and the third question. I think for the unit economics, I'm going to get Rumit to come in, who's our CFO. He can come in and talk about the question, right? Firstly, I think the model is very different, and you spoke about competition, right? I think we should draw a distinction between business design and product capability, right? The way we think about our life is we think of ourselves as platform players. So we are powering other players to get into financial inclusion, for example, right? So I don't deal with a retailer. I don't go get a retailer onboarded on my system directly, but I work with other people who have retailers out there. So when you talk about a BaFin example, BaFin has, their e-store, they have more than 100,000 stores, or you look at a CSC, which has 600,000 stores, right? They are my customers. I'm powering them with my technology. I am not out there competing with them on the ground or trying to, get the customer away from them, right? So that's number one. A lot of competition that you speak of or hear of is actually operating in that space where they are trying to do a land grab. Whereas in our case, we are trying to go through a, organized way of trying to get partners in who can bring in large number of retailers. Now, the business model is unique in the sense that we still make revenue basis every transaction that goes through our platform, right? We share revenues with the partners and with the retailers, but as against getting the retailer directly and therefore going through a much significantly higher cost of client acquisition, we'll end up working with a lower cost of client acquisition. So that I think works well. Also, we are able to then get a larger number of retailers onboarded in one shot as against getting them, on a one-by-one basis. The other thing is that when you are a platform play, right, we are focusing on building the platform and making the platform more robust. You can keep adding incremental products on the platform. I think Amit alluded to, getting into from a micro ATM solution or a POS solution, getting into e-commerce, getting into lending. I think the idea is these are all products. The way we think about life is that we are the backbone. We provide the backbone. We ensure that transactions happen. We ensure that latency is at a minimum. We ensure that fail rates are at a minimum. But the transactions are, and the customer is owned by our partner. Right. And the example that Amit gave was the Solaris Bank in Germany, which I think is a classic example. Of course, regulations are different in different countries, but they are able to provide the whole banking solution to partners without necessarily being a bank themselves. They don't really have a single customer who is a direct customer who owns an account on their platform, but they have people who they're powered. So banking as a service is the eventual goal, right? Where if you can provide the entire stack of banking as a service, then you land up powering other entities who want to find ways and means of monetizing their network. Now, the beauty of this, and I'm sorry I'm taking too long for this, but the beauty for this is that my client base could be anyone. It could be a food delivery app. It could be a company. It could be a person who's working on procurement with MSMEs. All of them who've created networks of or sold ideas and thoughts. They are able to use my platform to be able to incrementally monetize what they've built on the platform. Because at the end of the day, a lot of the fintech companies are using financial services to be able to monetize the networks they've built. We are able to power them without letting them or asking them to recreate the entire proposition of being able to deliver the full stack of financial services. Mm-hmm. So that's I think the one part. Rumit, you want to take the second part in terms of economics?
Just before this, if I look at your presentation in your business model, you also talk about credit. Yes. In your rural tech. So if you can just even, briefly.
Sure. So credit, I think, as you know, Neogen is also an NBFC, right? And one of the things that we've done is we have dovetailed credit into our payments business, right? Okay. So and it's a closed loop mechanism, right? So when I say I have 200,000 retailers who are transacting on my platform on a daily basis and are using my platform to power their micro ATMs or their DMT or their AEPS transactions, right? We get to see a lot of transaction data on these clients. I'm able to use that transaction data to be able to convert that into actionable data to be able to provide credit to those retailers, but primarily to enhance the level of business that they can do with me. So I think the credit proposition that we have is totally driven by having differentiated data, number one, and number two, using it to further the level of transactions that happen on our platform.
Sorry, just a clarification on this. But our balance sheet is not leveraged in this, or is it?
Sorry, I missed that question. Could you repeat?
Our balance sheet is not leveraged on this.
No, it's not leveraged. We've got capital, right? As I mentioned on my opening remarks, we have about 170 crores of cash.
Right. So our balance sheet is used to offer this credit, or
That's right.
Okay,
That's
great.
Right.
And on the unit.
Yeah. Rumit, you want to answer the question on unit economics?
Yeah, I'll take the question on unit economics. So one, I want to just set the context in terms of the business design and what Tash has mentioned. Given that we are an infrastructure platform, our cost of acquisition for the customer is low. So as a result, if you look at our broader unit economics, we are a variably costed model. Our fixed costs are largely from technology, which have very high operating leverage because we have very low customer acquisition or retailer acquisition cost. And that fixed cost of technology is spread over multiple products, right? So I think I just wanted to set the context in terms of how the cost structures move in our business. Second is in terms of revenue drivers. Different products have different unit economics. If I talk about the broad drivers of revenue, we have the license fee, which we take from retailers. We have the transaction income. For every transaction, there is an income that is generated, which could range between, depending on the product, between 30 bips to 100 bips. We could have devices and we could have cross-sell fee income, right? So all of these lines have different unit economics. But fair to say that from a gross margin perspective, this could range between 15 to 25%. And then with a tight and a low fixed cost structure, which is largely technology led, gives us a lot of operating leverage, which is why you see, unlike most other startups, our business is not been burning cash as we've been scaling this. This has been a low burn model, primarily because of the way our business design is structured. I hope that answers your question.
Yes. And just lastly, in terms of products, at the moment, what would be the broad range of products that we are offering? And say 2 years or 3 years down the line, how do you see that increase? Broaden, sorry.
So maybe I'll just answer the current product offering, and then Tash maybe can answer how we are expanding the platform, because that's part of the business growth plan that has got. I think in terms of the current product offering, this is largely centered and focused around the financial inclusion stack, which includes the domestic remittance business, the Aadhaar-enabled payment system, popularly known as APS, and the micro ATM. So these are the three primary products. Then over the last 6 months, we have been significantly expanding our product capability and building more use cases. So one example of that is Aadhaar Pay, which is what we call the UPI of rural India, which is thumb impression based digital to digital transfer. And we are building multiple use cases, for example, use case in collections, use case at the merchant level on a no smartphone basis. So there are multiple use cases that are getting built. Then there is credit, which is today largely a closed loop second product, a non-customer acquisition centric model from a credit perspective. So that's getting bundled in. In terms of the product stack expansion, maybe Tash, you want to talk about how we're looking to expand the product stack?
I think the way to think about that is, like I mentioned, that we are looking to expand the product stack from a neo-banking standpoint, right? So when you start thinking through liability products, potentially we would partner with banks to bring in liability products on our platform, which is a big opportunity. There could be investment products, which again could be brought into rural India. Now, please do keep in mind that we are talking about a very large rural market out here. 65% of the population still stays in rural India. So we are tapping a pretty significant market out here. This market is underserved and an underbanked market. A lot of people have opened accounts, 483 million at last count. People have opened accounts. These people are not being served, like they would like to be served, just because of the paucity of either way you call it ATMs or bank branches. Right? We are just trying to make sure that we are able to provide the entire stack of services. That's on one level. On the second level, the country has a significant number of POS machines that have been deployed across every retail outlet, right? In rural India itself, there are about 70 million rural retail outlets. There is a significant opportunity for POS machines to be installed there. There's a significant opportunity to make those POS machines multifunctional rather than just having them used only for using a card. There could be multiple things that you could do with those machines. So we are bringing in technology to be able to do all of that and provide all these solutions to different people who want to use this network, this network of businesses that they're trying to do. Now, what we are also doing is we are building up the technology to be able to provide things like business analytics, things like notifications, etc., to be able to make the whole platform a lot more robust, right, and become full stack neo-banking proposition, right? And from a service layer standpoint, we are adding incremental service layers, which are not product layers, but service layers, to make sure that between the product stack and the service layers, we are able to provide the full stack of financial services to our customers.
And Nirav, to your question on exclusivity, I think there is no partner exclusivity, but I think if you look at it from a business design perspective,
there are a lot of product-centric players. So the partners that work with us, effectively, they see these product-centric players as competition, right? Because if I am powering a partner with, say, 20,000 storefronts, effectively, I have created competition for a product-centric player by powering them to monetize their retail storefronts, right? So they never go to these product-centric players because they are obviously competition for them. So in terms of the business design and infrastructure-led go-to-market strategy or partner-led go-to-market strategy, we really don't see too much competition. Second is there are costs because these are deep tech integrations that we do with our partners, whether these are API integrations, SDK integrations, etc. So it's hard for them. So obviously, one, there is no direct player who's really offering this in the business design that we are doing. Second is these are deep tech integrations which have high cost of switching. So I think that's really from our perspective the exclusivity comes from, not from a contract.
Just last question. Yeah, sorry for my ignorance. Now for a bank, so would it be working with multiple players, including you, or is it a regional split? Or my question is relevant.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the question. Yeah, the voice.
BAP. In terms of BAP, we working with BAP, right? That was
banks. Okay.
The Bajaj Finance.
Right.
So like us, would they be working with other companies, and or is that is it a regional or?
So I think the way it works is that they've used us for a very specific use case, right? The specific use case that they're using us is on the collection side, and they've used one proposition we have on Aadhaar Pay, which is a single use case that they've used us for and tried us and found it to be quite successful. Now the conversation and opportunity is to try and see what else can we do for them in the various use cases that we have. What else can we do? So in the meantime, could they be talking to other people? Of course, they could be talking to other people. I don't think, the whole concept of exclusivity, Neeraj, in my view, it does not come by having a contract where we are exclusive. Our exclusivity comes from two things. One is the fact that, as Rohit mentioned, there's deep tech integration. So for a customer, there is a huge cost to move out. And therefore, our mandate is to continue to deliver the high quality service at the lowest cost possible. To me, that maintains or makes sure that a customer does not walk out of our proposition and continues to increase his, engagement with us.
Got that.
Okay. Thank you, Neerav. Thank you for asking the questions.
Thank you, Neerav. The next question comes from the line of Rohan Mandora. Rohan, please go ahead.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. So thanks for the opportunity. So on slide number 12 of the presentation, where we are giving product delivery infrastructure, slide 11, we also talk about B2G, C2G, and G2C. So what are these? Is it some color around that would be helpful?
So I think when you look at a partner like CSC, right? CSC is doing a lot of work. Let's talk about G2C, right? Government proposition where government is doing a lot of direct benefit transfers into individuals, right? When the government is doing the direct benefit transfers, the money goes into the bank account. How is that customer actually getting access to that account? That customer is utilizing our micro ATM solutions to be able to withdraw money from his bank accounts, right? Which are getting funded by the DBT solution that the government is giving, right? Number one. Number two, you have a lot of players like CSC, for example, which are fundamentally working on dispensing government services. For example, you want to get Aadhaar card enabled, you want to get birth certificate issued, death certificate issued, etc. You can do that in CSC centers, right? Now these CSC centers become a hotspot for a significant level of footfalls. So we are working with CSC to try and make sure that there is a mechanism whereby they are able to increase the product stack, right? And offer financial services to the customers who are walking in, maybe to do a government related activity, for example, an Aadhaar updation, but are also able to then get incremental services available to them. So we are tapping this entire segment to make sure that we are able to provide. End of the day, we are still providing financial services, right? We are not getting into providing government services, etc. We are still doing financial services, but we are using different places whereby we are able to deliver those services.
Rohan, just to add, these are basically our potential partners, right? Now, these partners could be delivering services to business, to the consumer, to the government. So this is the partner stack that we are talking about, who are eventually sort of our customers who we are powering. I think that's the definition that we are trying to give or bring out in that slide.
And on the slide where we are talking about the rural tech business, I think slide number 7, rural platform. So here, if you look at the GTV growth year on year has been around 12%, whereas the average transaction size has grown by around 18%. So in terms of volume, has there been a degrowth in this business? Number of transactions? How should we read this data points?
Yeah, so I think, look, in terms of the broader industry itself, through last year, we had a massive drop in the average transaction size. That's largely because of COVID, and this is visible across the industry, right? So when you look at NPCI data, etc., all of these trends will be visible. Now, there are certain periods specifically in the quarter where, say, there is a large DBT transfer. So when there is a large DBT transfer, the transaction sizes in that quarter or in that month completely changes. Or there are some state government subsidies or some social schemes that get doled out. For example, in Q2, there was a dole out of the direct benefit transfer. So these kind of events actually end up skewing the transaction sizes, but suffice to say, we are largely in line with the industry. It's not that we are very different from the industry in terms of the transaction sizes.
Sure, sir. And so just lastly, in terms of like the partnerships we have done with Bajaj, now the commissions that we would earn on the transactions that are getting routed through Bajaj vis-a-vis something that would be routed through individual retailers on similar kind of transactions. So what kind of a difference on margins would we have between the two category of
So Rohit, you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. So I think in both the situations, Rohan, the pricing structures are very different, right? So if I look at a typical retailer business which is doing, say, AEPS based transactions, the entire flow of revenue, the transactions, etc., happens through our partner, our channel, our bank account, and into our wallet. So that's a very separate and a different pricing structure. In cases where we are just offering the use case from a technology stack perspective, these could be priced purely from a transaction based only on technology. There might not be full flow through in the GTV, but they're still revenue accretive. But there is no full flow through from a GTV perspective or from a cash flow standpoint. So we may not be, so these may get priced on a per transaction. For example, in the market, if you see like AutoNAC or eNAC kind of mandates, they get priced on per eNAC or per AutoNAC, 1 rupee, 2 rupee, 1.5 rupees, depending on where the product is, right? So there are these various pricing structures which are available, which could be product centric, transaction centric, or as a percentage of the transaction value. So there are these 2 or 3 varieties of transaction structures and pricing structures that exist.
Currently, how would be the split between, say, something which is getting routed through the retailers vis-a-vis, say, institutional partners?
It's largely retailers. So yeah, so if you look at our go-to-market strategy, we have 2 legs of our go-to-market strategy. One is powering the larger enterprises who have storefronts. So when we talk about the larger enterprises, the enterprise go-to-market strategy, you have the Bajaj Finance, or you have a CSC, or you have a Bhafin. And then there is the local community BC strategy, which is small community BCs who have 10, 50, 100 sort of retail touch points, but they will never be able to build the kind of technology stack, bring up the compliances, etc. And then that's the other segment that we are powering in. So from a mix perspective, it's largely the latter, which is the local community VC. Our enterprise strategy is more recent. It's almost 2 or 3 quarter old sort of strategy.
Sure. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Rohan. If there's anyone else that has a question, you may press raise hand button.
Diwakar, I have a few questions that have come to me on my messages. I can probably talk through those as well, just in the interest of everyone. I think the first question is really about talking about what are the incremental products that we can provide on our platform post this whole hypergrowth plan, right? So today we are providing micro ATMs solutions, we are providing AEPS, we are providing domestic money transfer solutions, and Aadhaar Pay has been recently launched, right, with Bajaj Finance, as we mentioned, right? I think incrementally, the most obvious propositions that we can do is the POS solution, right? Doing a point of sale, really converting existing devices, point of sale devices into micro ATM or micro ATM devices into point of sale, therefore expanding the usage of these devices per se. Incrementally, digital lending is something that we have already toyed with. We mentioned about that. We are going to be doing more of that to the retail network. Then there is a liability set of products, which are neo-banking products, where we are able to provide liability solutions. Following that, you can provide, insurance, which is again something that we just recently launched, where we are able to provide insurance. Once a network has been created, the idea is to try and provide the entire stack of products through the network, right? And every product that we provide has an incremental fee income, which is why when I started, I was talking about the fact that 78% of our fee income, of our income today, is coming from non-balance sheet related, activities, which really talks about the fact, and this was very different, maybe a year ago, where balance sheet was probably contributing a pretty significant portion of the overall revenue of the company. So that's really how that has moved. There is another question which I do want to bring out. Are you going to become a bank? Do you think you can become a bank? I think that's a difficult question to answer, given that it's a highly regulated environment, not something that we have debated or discussed internally. So I would refrain. We think of ourselves as a technology company. We do provide the plan is to provide the entire tech stack. And we do have an NBFC license in the group, right? So that's really where we are today. I don't think we have a plan just yet, but who knows? As regulations evolve, right? And if a neobank license becomes real in India, will we apply for that? Yes, that will be a call the board will take, and I think we will approach it at the right point in time. I think the GTV question was another question which I think, Rumit, you addressed. The GTV growth 12% versus the average ticket size growth. I think that question's been addressed. So I'll pause here. If there are any more questions, we can take those.
Yeah, we have the next question from the line of VP Rajesh of Banyan Capital. VP, go ahead.
Thanks, Diwakar. Hi, Tash and Rumit. Congrats on the growth. And this sounds very audacious to, be investing 100 crores to hyperscale the business. So maybe you can just give a little bit more color on that. What exactly is the direction with that investment as you talk about investing in products and people?
Yeah. So I think maybe I can take that initially and Rumit can come in with some color. So I think in our business, the investment is really about people, right? We are investing in tech resources. It's about technology. Today we have about 520 odd partners, give or take, that we work with. Those 520 odd partners provide us with 200,000 retailers, right? That is the footprint that we have today of how we are able to deliver whatever we are able to deliver in terms of revenues, right? Now, the hypergrowth plan really talks about how do we take this into a multiple level of scale, right? So how do you move from here from your partners of 500 to 1,000 to 2,000, from retailers from 200,000 to 1 million to 2 million to 3 million? How do you really take the growth up there? Now, that requires multiple things. One, obviously, it requires investment in technology resources because we need to keep becoming and keep remaining ahead of the curve and being more relevant by providing incremental products, right? Because that makes more partners relevant for us. Now, what happens, VP, in our proposition is as we are providing the entire set of products, right? For example, even in our current stack, we have micro ATM, AEPS, DMT. Not every customer uses all the products, right? Some guys only come to us saying that we want the micro ATM solution from you guys. Give us the whole micro ATM tech stack. We want to integrate. We think this works well for us, for our ecosystem. So give us that. So we give that, right? The idea is to keep expanding the product stack to have everything on the table. Every customer will not use everything, but then provide the entire suite and customers can pick and choose what they want to use. For example, some customers may turn back and say that, listen, we only want a POS solution or we only want a liability solution, right? For our network, right? What are we doing effectively? We are allowing existing partners who have potentially either storefronts or access to storefronts, a method to monetize their network. What product to be used to monetize the network is really left up to them. We can give them ideas, we can give them thoughts, but we have the technology to be able to power that. So the idea is to become a full stack solution where we are able to provide everything on a single platform, which a customer can then use, and then slowly and steadily customers will use one versus the other, right? Collections is a case in point, which is an incremental product where we need to do a lot of work in terms of really scaling that up. We've done a use case with Bajaj Fin, which is working quite well, but I think that it opens up a multiple set of opportunities, right? And there are complementary businesses out here. Let me give you an example. In a micro ATM solution that we provide to a retailer, the retailer has to have physical cash, which he either gets from his bank or he collects by selling goods. But effectively, for him to dispense cash, he needs to have cash in hand. On the flip side, I have a collection proposition where I have some of the larger NBFCs who are struggling with figuring out, their customers in rural India want to give them cash for an EMI. Now they are sending people out there trying to collect the cash. Is there a way we can marry the two using technology and have that cash be delivered to the retail outlets that we are powering today? So it solves two problems. It buries the cash for the NBFC, the large NBFC, which is collecting its EMI. And for the retailer, it solves the problem of getting cash, which he can then use to dispense. Suddenly a dead asset has become a live asset. Suddenly a non-earning asset has become an earning asset. So that's the way we are thinking about life, about what are the problems we can solve. And everything is being thought of from providing a solution to a problem that somebody tells us, right? So Bajaj Finance discussion was a problem that they were struggling with. We thought of a solution. We gave it, they loved it, and we've thought of it as a solution that we can offer it to every other NBFC in the market, right? So we are now trying to figure out how best to do that. So the idea is to, in summary, to have a platform, the backbone, literally, which can have all these products where we can walk into any customer, whether the customer is an NBFC or a MFI, or it could be a fintech company providing just procurement solution, for example, or providing reconciliation solution to small businesses. We will have something to do with them. So our product stack should be broad enough to be able to attract everyone, irrespective of their core business, as long as they have customers and they want to find a way to monetize those customers using financial services. So that's really what we're trying to build. The money will all be spent in people, premises, thinking through, because we are not a heavy fixed cost company, right? So what happens is most of our cost today is on talent, right? And acquiring talent, I think is material. As we expand our tech centers, we are right now largely based in Bhubaneswar. As we expand our tech centers out there and maybe build a second, third city tech center, I think that's where you will see a lot of this investment going.
Got you. And will inorganic be part of this as well, or is it primarily all organic at this point?
This investment is all organic. There is an inorganic strategy by itself for the company, right?
Okay.
We've obviously spoken about that. But I think our inorganic strategy is going to be running on parallel rails. We want to really put our energy behind this proposition as we think through of businesses that can be of material, synergies to us, where we would look at acquiring them. Amit referred to that, right? Being listed sort of helps us because we are able to then figure out a better way to deal with the inorganic situations. Organic situations will require, infusion of capital, right? So
just one point I want to clarify, VP, is that all of this 100 crores is obviously not going go in day one. So I think the way the execution of this is going to get structured is in short sprints, whether it is from a product stack perspective, whether it is from a business execution standpoint, and then obviously there is going to be a tracking of the product delivery, the product adoption, the business build. And in those short sprints, it will get broken out.
Got it. Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, VP. The next question is a follow-on from the line of Nirav Dalal. Nirav, please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Just one question. Now, there are a few companies which are coming in a retail as a service model, right? Where they're looking at modernizing kirana stores, helping them in terms of procurement, right? Like becoming master wholesalers and then working with them and trying to get them on a platform. So in such a situation, would we be having or are we working with such companies? And if yes, what products that we are offering, and if not, where can we be positioned in such a scenario?
So, Nirav, you hit the nail on the head, right? I call these people as partners. We don't think of them as competition. We think of them as our extended arm to help us get to the retailers to be able to deliver all these products, right? So, people who are helping kirana stores modernize, they're actually, in some sense, getting access to a retail storefront.
Correct.
Right? And their proposition may be just a tech platform which is only doing procurement, for example, right? I'm just giving one example. It could be anything. It could be reconciliation. It could be the whole, managing of the books of the small retailers. It could be any of this, right? But once they've got access to the retail store, they have to find a way to monetize that retail store. Now, they could either think about building out the entire, financial services stack themselves, or they could come to us and they could get everything in a jiffy. Right. So we talk to all of them. We talk to people. We are open for business with all these kind of people who build networks and who are now thinking through how do we monetize them. And we've got ideas, solutions for them, which we are trying to do. So exactly the point you mentioned, these are how I describe our partners.
So we would be working with these partners at the moment as well.
Yeah, we would be working with some of them, of course. I can't say we could be working with all of them, but
yeah, sure. But we are working with.
Yes, we are working with. Yes, absolutely. Okay. And we are also working with old school, right? So it's not only the new school. We are also working with old school. I'll give you an example. An old school client, it could be a Hindustan Lever distributor who's dealing with maybe 10,000 retail outlets, and he's only selling the Hindustan Lever products, but he has access to those 10,000 retail outlets. We go and tell him, and we give him the idea of financial inclusion and tell him that, listen, you could potentially make more money by, getting all of these 10,000 retail outlets onto your platform and then onto our platform and then use them to be dispensing financial services because you only have access to these retail outlets.
Correct. So you can extend your credit business to these.
We can extend all our businesses, right?
Yeah,
we can extend our
for example,
micro ATM business, our AEPS business, our DMT business. The point being that it's not all about just the new age companies that we're dealing with. We're dealing with new age and old age. That's the point I was making.
Got that. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Nirav. Are there any other questions?
I think there is a question on the chat. Are the merchants on board need to pay upfront for micro ATMs? So in terms of our revenue model, as I had mentioned earlier, there is an upfront fees, one-time fee that we charge. Typically, we charge it to the partner, and then the partner may decide to pass on to the retailer or not to charge the retailer, but we charge the partner who's bringing in the retailer. So there is a upfront set of fees. The second aspect of the fee is of the revenue is a device. The retailer needs to bring in a device. Specifically, if it's an AEPS, there is a biometric device which could cost between 1,000 to 1,300. They need to bring that in. Or in case of a micro ATM, they need to bring a small micro ATM device. So that is an investment the retailer has to make. Which is a small investment between 1,000 to 3,000 rupees. But look, most of these retailers, this is not an efficiency product. It's an income product. And thus they are happy to make these investments. Second is, as Tash had mentioned in his opening remarks, we have evolved our technology stack to be able to now also deliver a device agnostic proposition. So if a retailer already has a POS device, we can actually power that POS device to double up as micro ATM. and vice versa, right? So obviously the way the technology is evolving and the way we are investing, we want to make this software centric rather than just a device or a hardware centric ecosystem.
I think Rumit, if I may just add, it's important to make that one distinction that Rumit made. Our propositions are not efficiency driven; they are income driven. We think of our business as an income augmentation business for our partners. The partners are making money on these transactions, right? As are we. So it just changes the landscape and the interest that people have. So as again, someone who's helping a customer become more efficient by providing him a more efficient procurement solution or by providing better, analytics, etc. We're actually giving him real income and real money right on day one for every transaction that gets transacted on our platform through their retail store.
I think there is a follow-up question on the chat. Is there any reward mechanism for the merchants? Yes, I think it is important because these are now directly managed by the partners, right? So the partners need to have the service infrastructure layer and capability, which could be around loyalty, rewards, customer service, customer support, business analytics. So I think if you look at our presentation also, where we have actually detailed out our product delivery infrastructure, there is the product proposition, which is whatever APS, DMT, etc. But there has to be a service infrastructure layer, part of which we have built, part of which we are building, to be able to deliver a full stack solution. So the partner can manage their retailers better, whether it is through loyalty, whether it is through notifications, whether it is through customer service. I think customer service is really, really important. And whether it is analytics. So all of these are built in the service infrastructure layer, which sits above our product stacks, which the partners can use to manage their retail stores. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. If there are no more questions, I think I'll kind of hand it back to Dash for his closing comments. Dash?
Yeah, thank you, Diwakar, and just want to end by thanking all of you for dialing in and listening to our story. We think we are operating in an interesting space. We will invite you again next quarter to come listen to how this quarter is going. I do hope all of you stay safe and wish you a very, very happy Diwali and a fantastic New Year from all of us at Neogen. Thank you for dialing in.
Thank you, guys, and wish you a happy festive season. In case anyone has a follow-on meeting request with either Dash or Rumit, please do write into us, and we'll be happy to set up a meeting for you guys. Thank you, and good evening. Bye.